Excellent. So, going to present this. Great. So I did this quiz review with a different class earlier, so that I'll update the YouTube link to be this one here that I'm posting. But there is a few questions here on the quiz. Excuse me, I'm going to go through each of these slides, but the main point that I wanted to go off of that we've seen before is that I'm going to have at the very top uh, the overall question. So, for instance, HTML coding. If you see anything about HTML coding or codes like that, you can look at this slide with the title page up here to denote what the topic is. And the quiz questions go through HTML, SEO, on-page versus off-page SEO as well. And then we have some questions with the search engines and those tools that we talked about, like the Google Search Console. This is a slide specifically on Google Search Console. And then, of course, there's just general topics like Black Hat SEO, these web crawlers, servers, and then search engines as well. There, so essentially, we're going through each of the chapters that we discussed throughout the quarter so far, and I just want to point out a few questions here that are specific to it. So, for instance, there is quite a few questions about a sitemap, and again, a sitemap is a way that we can navigate through the page easier, and this is also a part of the participation for forum posting. But remember that a sitemap can either be in XML or HTML. Either one of those is appropriate for the sitemap there. Great. There is a question here about meta keywords and descriptors, and we didn't go into those a great deal, but essentially, if we go back to any of the see here. I won't be able to pull it up just yet. Essentially, if you go back to any of these keywords here, we're able to describe what the page is about with these keywords. And then, of course, also, if you see this image here that I have on this page, where it says we're proud to offer residential glass replacement, that is what the descriptors are. So a meta descriptor is a small piece of text that the user can see on their page before they click to view it. So I do have a bunch of slides here, and I think that I've made it so that they're a bit more easy to read, and I wanted to make sure that you guys know, like, okay, if I have a question on SEO, I can go here to double check some of the fundamentals that we learned on it. So I won't be reading through all of these, but I do want to say a few things that might be a bit tricky. Remember that on-page and off-page SEO. On-page is up to us, where we are able to edit and manipulate the code that we currently have. And off page is stuff that occurs off the website. So that means that if someone links to your website that you maybe you didn't know about it or anything, that's off page SEO. Again, off page is out of our control, and on page is within our control. There is this question here that we mentioned a little bit, and it's just more so a specific question. The question is about AMP, which is being developed by Google. And remember, AMP is essentially just how we develop mobile pages properly. So if you see this question, just know that the Google is developing that, and it's not, excuse me, it's not like that specific of a question. It's a bit different, but essentially AMP is just what they're developing. Of course, don't use the Black Hat SEO techniques. That's the general census that we had there. Make sure that you rely on organic searching. And there's a trick question here about URL parameters. I just wanted to double check on that one. There's not really parameters in the URL that we can determine. A URL is just a set link to a website. Let's see here. Great. So this page here is just about Google Search Console, and some of the questions on the quiz, I went into here to determine what it does for us. Some of the questions on the quiz might say, what does Google Search Console do? Or it might do the opposite, where it says, what does Google Search Console not do? Or what is not a feature of Google Search Console? So make sure you double check and read through these, and please double check the questions more in depth. Great. To ensure that you're not getting tricked or anything like that by any of the questions there. Let's see here. There's a few questions on Black Hat SEO, of course. Remember, these are the ways that we can do Black Hat SEO. We want to make sure that we don't manipulate them too much. There's a few questions on web servers as well. Again, a web server and a web crawler is a way that we can go through these websites and determine what the information is that we're going to get from them. Please remember that web crawlers and web servers are interchangeable. And one more thing that I wanted to point out is in this first place, web crawlers have to identify themselves to web servers. So we didn't discuss this a ton, but essentially what's happening is that let's just say that you are Google and you're trying to be a crawler for Google. You have to go out and ask Google, hey, can I look at these? Is it okay to search for them? So a web crawler can't just be a random robot that goes out and gets information. It has to be identified and related to the actual server itself. Cool. And another thing here, and the second bullet point I want to make a point is that web crawlers do have favors for search, or excuse me, for search results. So a web crawler does have the potential to rank certain results higher than others, but it doesn't do that based on the way we develop the site. So the web crawler isn't going to give priority if you develop the site with Flash or HTML. It more so just wants to get the site out there, or excuse me, it more so relies on the organic search results that we talked about, such as proper keywords, content that's up to date. It won't check to see what you'd use to develop the site. Great. There's also a few tools here on the web crawlers, web servers, like the various tools that we talked about. But again, just want to make sure I've put down here the search query types, and please remember that there's no other search query types than these three. Transactional is the one where we look for something to buy. The other one, oh, sorry, that's a great question. Yes, I will be sharing these slides with everyone, and you're free to use them during the review. So don't feel that you just have to view all these. I just wanted to go through them first to show off some like specific points. Again, transactional is where you're looking to buy something. Informational is where you're looking for an answer. So pretty much, how would I bake a cookie? Navigation is where you're looking to go somewhere. Something like, how do I get to this certain business or area? And as a general thing, remember that search engines are picky. It's going to take into consideration your load time, and that's how it will rank you. Great. So we went through a lot about sitemaps, and I think sitemaps are pretty straightforward to understand, but there's a few little niche questions on there that I want to make sure we understand. For instance, the two type of sitemaps, and this is something that we talked about today's participation forum. It is both the XML and the HTML sitemap. I'm sorry, what am I? Sorry about that. So essentially, XML sitemaps and the HTML sitemaps are ways. Excuse me. The HTML sitemap is how we can get users to locate different pages on the website, and the XML is what the robot or the thing searching for a site uses to look for it as well. Remember, the trick question here is you always want to use both sitemaps. One is not better than the other. They're for two different purposes, and you want to use both of them. And as a general reminder, make sure your URLs, this is what we learned in Project 1, make sense to the user. This URL doesn't really make that much sense in comparison to this one here. Great. Uh, on the questions on the sitemap generation tools, they are not asking you how to use them. They are just asking for the names. So I went ahead and put together the names here for reference for you guys. And again, as a general notion, if you're ever asked this on the quiz, the most amount of pages that we want to go in or away from the home page is 3 clicks. If you go deeper than 3 clicks, people are going to lose interest, get confused, and stop looking at the website. Great. So I wanted to cover those ones on these slides together. Again, this is just me reiterating what is written on the slides, but I want to make sure that this all makes sense. So again, the layout of the quiz will be next week, and then please feel free to use these slides and reference the top page to see which, to see which slide helps with the quiz. I went through that a little quickly, but I will release these to everyone alongside the video. Does anyone have any questions on these slides or a certain topic that you would like me to double check so far? See if I have the chat. Great. Okay. Awesome. Fantastic. So I'll go ahead and I'll stop up this sharing here and I'll end that recording. I hope I was recording. Okay, it was.